Hi, I'm Grace, and I am doing my persuasive speech on mental health interventions for a better future in our justice system and in our jails and prisons. So, mental health issues are significantly overrepresented in the criminal justice system. It's estimated that about 44% of people in jail and 37% of those in prison have a mental illness, and majority of them are undiagnosed. And when I mean mental illness, I mean like major depressive disorder, BPD, bipolar, those such. It's not necessarily like, you can have like anxiety or like depression, but it is more severe mental illnesses, which typically pertain to like why they are in jail. As well. So the criminalization of mental illness is what I'll be talking about. So let's get a little deeper into the statistics. 43% of inmates have a history of mental health problems. And for federal prisoners long-term, like serving, the number is 23%. And the most common mental disorder reported is major depressive disorder, which affects 27% of state prisoners. And then this situation is even more concerning for certain demographics. With women, it's 66% of women incarcerated report having a history of mental illness. That is that's majority of them have a history of mental illness, which is extremely sad. And veterans as well, 55% of them experience mental illness. And this is really troubling given the unique challenges that veterans face because they serve our country, and it's just showing that there is not programs in place to help veterans, especially because they have a lot of combat related trauma and they have a lot of difficulties reintegrating into civilian life. And especially the combat related trauma is things that it's obviously very unavoidable, like complex PTSD and things like that, and that can keep you from holding a job, lashing out. It can cause anger management. There's so many different things. And the juvenile justice system paints an equally grim picture. 70% of the youth in the system have a diagnosable mental health condition. So for me, this is really important because I think this shows it really starts from the ground up, and it shows we're not combating the issue within our youth. And that's why it's getting so out of hand as an adult. And I think it's showing that the troubled youth, the programs need to be less focused on them being troubled and more on what's going on, how can we help them mentally to rehabilitate them. Because if you're rehabilitating children back into society to where they're not troubled anymore, then you're not going to have troubled adults. So I think already categorizing the children as troubled and putting them in a system for non-violent crimes and things like that. It's you're already putting them in this box from such a young age to where it's now it's so much harder for them to get out of that box. The consequences are really far-reaching. And what I mean by this is suicide is the leading cause of death for people held in local jails. And that's extremely sad that is the leading cause of death, that people resort to killing themselves. And there's actually a chart that I'm going to show here, and it shows most suicides occur shortly after jail admission, which the highest day is day 4 days after being in jail, killing yourself, which is very, very troubling and sad. And there needs to be more things in place so this does not happen. Another crazy statistic, because I know that this is a blurry chart, but I just really liked the visual graphic of it, is the 2 in 10 youth ages 13 to 18 in the general population have mental illness, and 7 in 10 youth in juvenile justice have mental illness. And that just shows you what's going on. 3 out of 5 people with a history of mental illness do not receive mental health treatment. So 3 out of 5 people. So that's majority of people are not being treated at all. And the lack of care is just going to worsen mental health conditions and the likelihood of people being recommitted back into jail. And that's not what we want, obviously. And that statistic is so high. So the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration has several recommended approaches that are on their website and stuff. So it's just early identifying them as these are the issues, engagement of law enforcement and first responders, which is really important because 1 in 4 people shot and killed from 2015 to 2020 were all people with mental health conditions by the police force, like they were shot and killed by the police. And that just shows there needs to be proper training put into place. And we just don't have that. And I think there's also like a funding issue with that, etc. But that really does need to happen as well. So the path forward requires a multifaceted approach involving policymakers, law enforcement, mental health professionals, community organizations, and it requires a shift in how we view mental illness as a whole and the criminal justice. And we need to move from a punitive model to one that prioritizes treatment and rehabilitation and really focus on that. And I really do think that by providing like evidence-based strategies, and adequate mental health care and putting more funding in that and less violent and kind of more troubled, the idea of like punishment and more into mental health funding will adequately help our society. So the time for change is now, and I think we need to work together to ensure that mental illness is met with treatment and not incarceration. And my references used for this are Treatment Advocacy Center, National Alliance on Mental Health, and the Justice Initiative from Laura and John Arnold Foundation, and my KSU Library documentary, which is the mental health interventions for individuals with serious mental illness and the criminal legal system. Thank you so much.